Shout out Ron Swanson. Where he takes a picture of Big Ben and he's like, oh, look, a clock. We don't have that in America. Tonight, we're joined by a very special guest, Adam, going to help us break down a little bit of the AFC South today. So we're going to be talking win totals. We're going to be talking what we like on who's going to win the division, over-under on wins, all that good stuff for y'all. So give us a like, give us a subscribe. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to win the AFC South and how we doing tonight, boys.
I'm doing great. How about you, Adam? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. I'm really happy to be here on what I can only assume is Isaiah Rogers' favorite podcast.
Yep, we gave him all his picks.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the fact he was betting on Colts games, and it's the Shaving Points podcast. I feel like it's, it had to be his favorite.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we're serving up nothing but winners.
Yes, 100%.
There we go. That's the screen I was looking for. All right, let's get into some Indianapolis Colts. So, new head coach, Shane Steichen takes over. They got the greatest name in football at offensive coordinator, Jim Bob Cooter.
Mm-hmm.
And what's their D coordinator's name? B. Mason is what I've written down here. Ben Mason, maybe?
I think they still have, I'm pretty sure his name is currently escaping me, but I think they kept the defensive coordinator.
Oh, wait, yeah, it's Gus Bradley.
Yeah, Gus Bradley, yeah. And
the graphics wrong.
I can't believe his name was escaping me there, but yeah, I'm pretty sure Gus Bradley stayed on, So,
speaking of which, on the Gus Bradley front, I actually dug a little into that because it's like, I feel like Gus Bradley just always has a job and always gets talked about like for his cover 3 defense. It's the old Seahawks defense, but like his defenses never seem to be that good anymore. And I went and pulled the info. He's had a top 10 defense 4 times in the last 14 years as a D coordinator or head coach. Only 4 times. I don't really get why he's still a D coordinator.
I mean, obviously, heading into 2022, they had to hire a new defensive coordinator because the Bears, plucked Matt Eberflus. And I don't know. I think that they just wanted a guy. I think what Frank Reich liked about Matt Eberflus was that he ran the defense and he was, it's kind of like that Matt Nagy, Vic Fangio situation where Eberflus was just kind of like the defensive head coach, right? And that kind of let Reich just kind of run the offense while being also the head coach. And so I think he was kind of looking for a similar vibe in bringing in Gus Bradley, where it was like a trusted name, respected name. But I definitely think and I'm far from any kind of defensive scheme expert or defensive play calling expert. So it's hard for me to have a lot of authority, but the people that I really like, a lot of the analysts that I kind of like and trust kind of questioned it as like a pretty questionable hire. And so I definitely think looking back on it and kind of seeing the results, that kind of stands out. And then on top of that, I mean, just the Colts had a lot of name recognition last year, but especially with Shaq Leonard missing the entire season last year, you ended up seeing a pretty how they had a dearth of talent in a lot of the areas that weren't defensive line, and that really ended up hurting them a lot. So kind of just resulted in a really bad defense overall.
Yeah. And then coming into this season, after retread after retread at quarterback, trying to figure something out, they take probably the most dynamic, interesting quarterback that we've seen go early in the draft in years.
One of the most interesting.
One of the strongest arms we've ever seen, can run like the wind. He can do it all, but then you watch his tape at Florida and it's leaves a lot to be desired with play on the field. But when he flashes, it's oh my God, we haven't comparing him to Cam Newton's almost an injustice to Anthony Richardson because he's even more athletic than Cam Newton. So very, very interesting team here, especially if they can refine some of those skills with Anthony Richardson there, Jonathan Taylor, of course, and then pretty good depth of running backs, and then an emerging wide receiver in Michael Pittman. So I'm excited for this offense.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think one of my favorite things about like bringing in Anthony Richardson is the fact that they're doing it with Shane Steichen, and you don't have to like close your eyes and imagine what Shane Steichen might be able to do with a super athletic running quarterback who needs a little refinement passing, because he was just doing that in Philadelphia. Obviously, like it's not a 1-to-1 comparison because Jalen Hurts is not quite the athletic dynamo that Richardson is, and Richardson's a lot bigger. They're probably a little bit different style of runners. And Hurts also doesn't have that cannon of an arm, but the overall point is like you have this quarterback who needs a little help, needs a little time on the passing end. And I don't think he's like as raw as a lot of people tend to like think he is. Like if you sit down and watch like the way he played at Florida, you can kind of see that he managed pockets well. He does like seem to read the field. They had him checking protections and stuff like that. And so it's not like he wasn't like quote unquote playing quarterback. He wasn't just like the best athlete out there at the quarterback position, which is what you see a lot of times. He was doing a lot of those quarterback things. But he also had plenty of errant throws and then a really bad receiving core that led to, I think, like a 56% completion percentage, which obviously is a huge red flag. But the fact that you have a coach who can build an offense, and you have literally seen the proof of concept of him building an offense around the strengths of his quarterback and the players that he has, just in Philadelphia, I think it makes me really optimistic about what they can do with Richardson at quarterback.
Yeah, and at Florida, I think Florida did him a pretty big injustice by firing Dan Mullen when they did and bringing in Billy Napier. Dan Mullen, the quarterback whisperer, as he is called. I mean, one more year under him, I would have liked to see the progress he made, bringing in a brand new head coach in that system. I mean, so he started half the year last year than the full year last year, half the year before. So I would have liked to see that full year and full off season under Dan Mullen being the guy, and see if the progress would have been different rather than bringing in Billy Napier. So that's just my 2 cents on the whole Florida situation. I mean, but like I said, I mean, when he was on in Florida, like unstoppable. So, I mean, I definitely think I think there's a lot more there to work with. Like, it's not like a Trey Lance situation where he played 4 games in college or whatever. It's like he understands the game. It seems like he just has to refine some things, and I think he can be a stud. Absolutely.
In the draft process, like I was pretty impressed with some of his tape, to be completely honest. Like I wasn't expecting to see him hitting second, third reads the way that he was at times. And I'll be honest, his biggest problem on tape, I thought, was he just didn't know when he should go for it and when to check down. And it was almost like he never wanted to check down, but they were always trailing. Like, they were always in these situations where it's like
they weren't a very good
asking
team.
him to go play hero ball. So he went and played hero ball. So I'm really interested to see whether, I mean, his short accuracy was an issue because his feet were all over the place. I'm sure they'll do everything they can to straighten that out. But the other aspects that makes me nervous with him, I only found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other quarterbacks who started fewer games than him. And my definition of start was 15 or more pass attempts, because it's kind of hard to find starting data. It's not on Sports Reference very clearly for college, but it's Mark Sanchez, Mitch Trubisky, Dwayne Haskins, Trey Lance. And then there's 3 more guys who won a national championship or a Heisman or both. And that's Cam Newton, Kyler Murray, and Mac Jones. So like, it seems like there's a bit of a clear differentiation there, but also when you're this athletic, I don't know that it matters. Like if you're going to bring this much of a threat with your legs, it just changes the math of all this.
Yeah. I think too, like, it's kind of back to the Dan Mullen point. I think in some ways, one of the reasons, I mean, I'm not a big college football guy, definitely not a Florida fan, so it's hard for me to like speak to this with much authority. So I could be way off on this, but it just seems like Dan Mullen's like closing years in Florida were just like full of huge kind of mistakes and missteps. And I think one of those was the fact that like, I remember watching some Florida games like early in 2021, and they would play Anthony Richardson and Emory Jones. And I remember just thinking, like, why are they not just playing 15 all the time? Like, he's so much bigger, faster. He has a better arm, but they just kept having Jones play like the quarterback. And I think that's just kind of like the college football, trust the veteran mentality that we've seen in a lot of places. And I think that in a lot of ways that kind of did Richardson a disservice, that he didn't kind of get that playing time. And who knows if maybe that 2021 Florida team would have been better off for it. I also just think, like, in the NFL, I tend to think that, like, whether or not quarterbacks succeed or fail is as much them being failed or helped to succeed as it is that on themselves. And when you look back on a lot of those players that you named, like, most of them had really, really bad supporting casts, and the ones that thrived, I think outside of maybe Cam Newton, he was like, just an athletic freak in the vein of Richardson, obviously. And so, it took him a little bit to catch up. And I think that's going to be what happens with Richardson. But you look at like Kyler, he came in, and I don't think Cliff Kingsbury was anything, special offensively, but he was at least an offensive minded guy. They ended up trading for DeAndre Hopkins. Like, they gave him help.
You gotta tread carefully with that, Adam. You're talking to two Texas Tech Red Raiders here.
Oh, sure. Definitely. But, at the same, listen, no disrespect there, but still, like, by the NFL standards, he definitely was nothing special, I think.
Yeah.
But again, it was like he still was able to build around the strength, and he obviously knew Kyler because Kyler was at Texas Tech for a spell before transferring out. So there was that little bit of Texas A&M. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You know what?
But
Texas Tech was this close.
Too many transfers in Texas.
Cliff Kingsbury recruited Kyler Murray to A&M.
That's
and
what
then
it was.
Cliff took the head coaching job, and Kyler transferred.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay,
So they were together. They did have a history.
I thought it was at Tech, but yeah. Either way, so the whole point being, like, most of those guys, the guys that succeeded, or you could say had success in the NFL, is because they had valuable situations around them. And I do think that, like, the Colts offense isn't anything extremely special, but I think that the pieces are there, specifically with Shane Steichen, and then they have enough talent at like the skill position players. And I feel like their offensive line cannot be as bad as it was last year. Like, they dealt with a lot of injuries last year. I feel like they're just going to have a regression that's going to result in improvement. And to me, like, that is the stuff that I think is encouraging about Richardson. And so I think that having that supporting cast around him, and again, the fact that, like, his stats could have been a lot better if he had better talent around him, and he just did not have that.
Another, I don't know. In my mind, it makes sense. I don't know how much is actually true, but I think bringing in a guy like Gardner Minshew to be his backup, just like a hype you up, like, energy guy, like, good locker room guy, veteran in the league now, going in his fourth year. Like, I feel like that, but he's still young. Like, he still understands the youthfulness of the game and all of that. Like, he's not just like a hardened veteran. That I think that's kind of an underrated aspect here, like having a guy like that who played under Mike Leach in college, and is kind of bounced around the league, had success in the league, but just a real high, like, hype you up energy guy as your backup. I mean, I think that's a huge plus for them as well. I mean, that could just be me looking way too deep into it, but
no, but I think there's something.
that.
I think there's something to it, especially when you consider, like, his journey around the NFL has been spending the last 2 years in Philadelphia with Shane Steichen. So you're not just bringing in the coach, like the play caller that is going to kind of be helping out Anthony Richardson, but you have the backup quarterback who was just kind of there as the backup. I don't want to give Gardner Minshew credit for what Jalen Hurts did, but he was there, and he certainly had a part to play in the quarterback room and in those discussions. And I think that they're definitely, you can't say that he did nothing in that area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He definitely had some part to play. So I think that, being able to contribute that. And then on top of that, like, let's just say the Colts decide for whatever reason that they don't think Richardson is ready to take that field right away. Like, they know that they can kind of rely on him to, at least do the right things. It's not, he's not going to give you high level quarterback play. He might not even give you average quarterback play, but he's not going to be complete and total, dog shit, if I am allowed to swear on this podcast. So
No, you're good. And
So,
I think if they can get back to, a good dose of Jonathan Taylor without running him into the ground, You have a big body and Michael Pittman out there to catch some passes. Like, I think this offense can get something going, and they have a strong D line, some solid linebackers. So, I mean, this team, I think the division's pretty wide open. Like, I think the Jags are really, really good. I think the Jags are the cream of the crop in this division. But like after that, like if something happens on that Jaguars team, this division is completely wide open. And I think the Colts are setting themselves up pretty good for the future.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I kind of think the Colts will end up in second place in the division just because I think that the Titans are going to have the worst offense in football. I believe in Mike Vrabel as a coach, and I think their defense is going to be good, but I just think they're going to be really, really bad. And then I think like the Texans and Colts are kind of in the like this area where I could see. Yeah. I don't think they're going to be very good. Like when I say second place, like in the division, I think like 7 and 10 is probably second in place in this division, and that's probably where I see the Colts maxing out. But I think the Texans and Colts both could either be one of the worst teams in football or in that 7 and 10 kind of area, and so I think that's kind of what I just think that I believe in Shane Steichen. I think if I was a team, I'm a Bears fan, so my team didn't need to hire a head coach this year, but if I was a team that needed to do that, like I think Shane Steichen probably would have been the guy I wanted, him or Ben Johnson from the Lions, who ultimately decided to stick in Detroit. So I think just getting the guy that I think most people should have wanted in this head coaching search should be encouraging. And then, like I said, you don't have to work too hard to imagine what he can do with a quarterback that needs a little bit of refinement. And you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. Like, just think about the idea of like Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson as like read option RPO. Like, what an incredibly dynamic, thing or threat, double threat to have back there. And then I think like, we mentioned Michael Pittman already, and Pittman is a good player, but I think Alec Pierce is like the almost perfect fit wide receiver for what Anthony Richardson needs, because Richardson is not like, obviously he had 56% completion percentage in college, but he's not like a totally inaccurate passer. He's also just not like a dart thrower. Like, he's not going to put it on you 100% of the time. And I think a guy like Pierce, who is like 100% just like a vertical go up and get a guy, was I don't know if he was in the top 50, but second round pick last year. Like, he was, obviously highly thought of in the league. I think people kind of forget that he was not taken that far after George Pickens was, and George Pickens obviously is like pretty highly regarded at this point, whereas Pierce is kind of like, to the wayside. But Pierce had, the worst quarterback play in football last year, pretty much, with Matt Ryan. So hard for him to have much of a good rookie year. So I think that that's like a really good pairing. And I think that the Colts have all the pieces in place to kind of have the floor be pretty high for Richardson as a rookie. And I think that can carry you pretty far. Although I do think their defense is going to be pretty rough.
Yeah.
Real quick on Alec Pierce, shout out Glenbard West hitters. That's my dude right there. That's my dude. But one thing that's really interesting with their wide receiver core to me, and I was like, once I saw this, I couldn't unsee it, I guess. Like on an offense that I'm expecting to be, very, very Eagles-esque, very like run option type offense. Behind Pittman and Pierce, they might have the smallest wide receiver core in football.
Mm-hmm.
Like with Josh Downs, Isaiah McKenzie, Brashad Perryman, Ashton Doolin, these are all little guys, really thin guys, speedsters. So obviously you love the speed with Anthony Richardson, but I'm not sure they have a third receiver who can block, which for a run heavy offense is interesting.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. That I think like Pittman though, because Pittman is like a big body, but I think he's definitely more of like a slot kind of receiver to me. Like, I think if you were to take the two of, him and Pierce, I think Pierce is more of your outside guy, whereas Pittman, you kind of like can move around a little bit more.
He's more of a possession guy.
Yeah, that can help them out a little bit. And I think will help out with a lot of like the underneath throwing that Richardson struggles with. But like if you look at Anthony Richardson's heat chart for throws, in college, it's like nothing over the middle, nothing, in that intermediate range. So that they might not be doing that right away anyway.
Yeah. So looking at the odds for this team, you have win total at 6.5. You have playoffs at plus 360, win the division at plus 500, AFC Championship at plus 7,000, Super Bowl at plus 10,000. So what do you like the best out of these? Do you like the over under? Or are you gonna roll the dice at that plus 360? You think that's enough? You think you're getting enough there to lay that, or Because I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking under, but I was just gonna see what you guys are thinking.
I definitely think if I had to place a bet, I'd probably go under. But I can see them getting into 7. I don't think I see 8. I don't think I see 8, 9 for them. I mean, they don't have an overly daunting schedule, but I do think their defense is going to be pretty bad. Like they have a good offensive line or good defensive line, but like their secondary, they're going to, with Isaiah Rodgers, I think going to be suspended at least for the whole year, if not more. Like they're going to probably be starting 2 rookies.
That Rodgers suspension really hurts too. He finished the season strong last year. Like I didn't even know who he was. The suspension came in. I went back digging on him. He put up some serious numbers last year, out of nowhere.
He's definitely a solid player. Like, he's one of those guys like that's probably like an 81 in Madden that you just like grab as like, your second cornerback when you need one in free agency or whatever. Like he's just that kind of cornerback where it's like he's useful. He's not a big name, but Kenny Moore had a pretty rough year in the slot last year, so he's going to need a big bounce back. But I'm like, I mentioned I'm a Bears fan. Obviously, Q, you're a Bears fan. Like their defense to me is kind of hilariously the inverse of the Bears, where it's like the Bears I think have a very solid back 7, but their defensive line is horrible. Where like if Shaq Leonard is not back, like the Colts back 7 is probably the worst in the league. And that's largely just because they're probably, like I said, they're going to be starting 2 cornerbacks that are rookies, and that's just such a hard position to play as a rookie.
Both, but
yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, but then their defensive line, they have one of the best defensive tackles in football, obviously in Buckner. And then I think Grover Stewart's really good. And Taven Bryan, who, we have on the screen as someone who they just signed, I think makes a lot of sense. And their edge rushers are pretty good as well. So I think that their front can do some things, but their front is going to have to do some things for them to keep people off the board. Cause I don't think their back is going to hold up very well in pass coverage and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, for me betting this, I'm taking the under, and if I'm not taking the under, I'm taking them to make the playoffs because I think that they go over, everything goes right, and if everything goes right, I think they can win 10 games. So I mean, I think they win between 4 to 6 games, ideally, and then if everything goes perfect, they can be 9 to 11 wins if everything falls their way. So, if I'm not taking the under, I'm just taking that plus 360 to make the playoffs and hoping they get all the breaks. So and
I made
their late season stretch is not bad. I mean, those last 4 games: Pittsburgh, at Atlanta, Raiders, Houston. I mean, if they got 6 wins going into the last 4 weeks of the season, I mean, they could make a run.
So I'm thinking along the same lines, Jay, where like. And I said on last week's episode, I'm done tying up my money on over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't make a whole lot. I don't make a whole lot of.
I'm looking for value.
Bets, but
not saying that anyone here is, but like I'm just saying my strategy is fully find value, and I think the value here is playoffs. Like if I'm being completely honest,
nearly 4 to 1
division at plus 500. Just something goes wrong in Jacksonville.
Yeah, 5 to 1.
Say that everything goes right to the Colts at 5 to 1. I think that is good value right there. Even though I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs, I think they have a chance to in that division.
It's a 500 league. Like, if you think it's gonna be a close race, like always take that plus number because, I mean,
I think 5 to 1 for a team I expect to take second place is
Well, in the Jags, I mean,
solid.
If you wanted to kind of be super optimistic about the Colts potentially, and then just kind of have a little devil's advocate about the Jags, like the Jags were, barely playoff team last year, didn't win the division even, and barely scraped in, and then or maybe they did win the division actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember if they ended up.
Titans won the division last year.
Titans won. Okay, I remember the Jags.
No, the Titans didn't.
No, I think the Jags backed into it because I remember they hosted the playoff game against the Chargers.
Because the Titans ran through like 3 quarterbacks at the end of the year. They were playing.
Titans still made the playoffs.
But
either way, like the Jaguars barely scraped in, and then they didn't really make a lot of huge offseason additions this year. Obviously, the big offseason
Calvin
addition.
Ridley.
Their biggest addition isn't really an offseason addition because they made it in the middle of last year with Ridley being suspended. That's obviously the biggest one, which could be huge, but He also hasn't played football in nearly 2 years. So who knows how much impact that really will have. So I guess you could say, like, if everything does go right for the Colts, the Jags last year were a 500 team that, their only big addition is a guy who hasn't played in a couple of years. Maybe you can kind of talk yourself into that division win for sure.
Are they our next team?
Yeah. Once we got our next guest coming up here, once he jumps on, we'll switch over to them. But so I don't want to get too much Jags talk out of me.
Sure.
Yet,
Okay.
But like I like the Jags a lot. So my plus 500 here is nothing about the Jags. Just saying shit happens in the NFL. So it goes wrong all the time. At plus 500, I think there's value.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, do you want to kind of break down the schedule, strength of schedule at 30? And you look at the schedule and it's like, it's not crazy to look at a playoffs or a division win. I mean, start out with Jacksonville. You have to play them twice. Then Houston and Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's been shaky these last couple of years. I mean, I know the best Lamar Jackson's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but got to stay healthy, got to stay on the field. So it kind of sucks that you're getting them early, but I mean, that's not a bad three game stretch. And then you immediately go to the Rams and Tennessee. It's like, those aren't the worst teams to see. And then you get your second Jacksonville game out of the way early. And then Cleveland, New Orleans, Carolina, New England going into the bye. Coming off the bye to Tampa Bay.
New England being in Europe does make it kind of interesting.
But
you see how I color-coded those for you, Jay?
Yeah.
I like that.
Let's see it this time. But you look at the schedule and it's like playoffs at plus 360. I mean, I could see them starting 2-1 and then going 3-0. Like, I could see them being 5-1 going into that Cleveland game. I could see them losing to Cleveland. New Orleans is well coached. I could see them losing that. Maybe split Carolina and New England. But going into the bye week, like 7-3.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's maybe a little aggressive. Like, I see more like 1-2 maybe in those first three. Like, I think Jacksonville just seems to have the Colts number for whatever reason every year. It's just one of those things the Colts can't shake. Even the Wentz year, I mean, obviously the Wentz thing was a big deal, but
I'm just saying, like,
going to Jacksonville that can't win, or was it the Jacksonville coming to Indy?
It's Colts going to Jacksonville. They cannot win. They can't win in Jacksonville, but that first one being at home might help them out a little bit. But I still just think the Jags are the better team. And then assuming Richardson is starting, you're talking about rookie head coach, rookie quarterback.
But I could in that situation, it could also be like a welcome to the NFL moment for Anthony Richardson, where he goes out there, he rushes for 230 yards, a couple of touchdowns. He throws 14 for 17 for 2 more touchdowns, and maybe Jonathan Taylor gets one, and all of a sudden they got 42 points, and you're like, this team is for real. And then maybe they go to Houston and lose, then they beat Baltimore the next week. Like, maybe. I could see them opening I think 2-1, 1 or 2, but then after that, they have 2 very winnable games. So I mean,
I definitely think like in that first 5, I can see them coming out 3-2 for sure.
Winning record.
I can see that absolutely. And then I think like heading into the bye week, like if they're, I do think like hovering around 500 is very, very possible for this team. My biggest, like, I just keep coming back to like, I just don't see if Shaq Leonard is not healthy, especially like I just feel like the defense is going to be so bad. Like they just Zaire Franklin is a pretty good linebacker, but like their depth after Leonard, if he's not gonna if he doesn't play well, if he's not healthy,
especially
playing at his level, like they're just gonna be like again that front is nice, like those that line, but after that it's just like, oh my god, there's so much.
It's not out of the question that they get Ngakoue back either. Because he's been kind of hinting that he might go back to Indy. I think he just wants money.
So if I'm putting my Colts hat on for week 1, I'm sitting here saying, man, Dougie P and Matt Nagy are tight. When Nagy went to 2.0, that offense just went down the drain. So when Pearson goes to 2.0, hey, he did it to Wentz. Year 3 Wentz, just down the drain. So I'm sitting here saying like Colts all the way because Dougie P is going to ruin it. And these starters, we're going to be perfect. We're going to have no injuries because we don't have much depth on this O-line or D-line. It's pretty concerning. And like linebackers, like you said, but if everything goes right and Dougie P tanks it like his best friend, Matt Nagy, I'm feeling good.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, like I said, I'm actually surprised at how optimistic you guys are. I felt like I was going to end up being like kind of almost the high man, even at.
Hey, I said if my Colts hat is on.
Yeah,
if
no,
my
I
Colts hat is on.
I took the Texans to win the division last year. Like, don't you talk to us about optimism.
I like that one.
I had the Jags.
Yeah. There you
that
go.
was a
Yeah,
nice
but
pay.
I do think like I just think at the end of the day, like basically, it's so hard for rookie quarterbacks to succeed, especially one who I don't think he's like a total work in progress, but he does need a little bit of refinement. And it's a rookie head coach. Like their offense, I think, can be really exciting, but I don't see it happening right away. And I just think the defense is going to be rough. So I think 3-2, like I said, in that first 5 is possible. But I also, if they end up 0-5, it still would not surprise me that much either. Like they could really, their range of outcomes for the Colts really is huge. Like they could potentially be one of the worst teams in the league or borderline playoffs for sure.
So they could have one of the best lines in the league on both sides if they stay completely healthy.
Absolutely.
But if one guy goes down on the O-line, it could be some real trouble.
Also, if we're looking at purely upside, I like the Texans more than I like the Colts. So I'm not sitting here like banging the drum for the Colts by any means.
Sure.
But I mean, it is a 500 league, so you gotta find the high points for every league. So it's like I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they're picking in the top 5.
Yeah, I think just at the end of the day, I think if the Colts I'm a Bears fan, and just when I think about the Colts, like I think, Anthony Richardson, if he just has like what Justin Fields did in 2022, if he has that kind of season, that should be a success in a lot of Colts fans' eyes, and that he makes a little bit of progress as a passer. He makes some exciting plays on the ground with that athleticism he has. That would be, you get to see the flashes. That would be exciting. That's like what the season should be about. Wins and losses shouldn't matter that much at the end of the day.
I'm not going to take the Justin Fields standard. Justin Fields is an excellent passer. He proved.
I love Justin Fields. Don't get me wrong.
He's had nothing to work with.
Hey, I'm a Bears fan. I love Justin Fields. Okay. Do not get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, obviously, like, no. Like, it.
You said he improved as a passer, and I was like, he's a great passer.
He just like his rookie year was so bad, man. Like that's the only reason I say that. Like and again, he got no help, so it was just like there's still some work to be done there. But one of the
worst situations a rookie quarterback's been thrown into in a long time
ever. I mean, like, and that is just to compare it there. I mean, like. That's one of the biggest differences between what Fields stepped into when you think about these hyper athletic quarterbacks compared to what Richardson's stepping into, where Matt Nagy had no fucking clue what he was doing with Justin Fields, no plan whatsoever. Like
we didn't
go ahead.
We didn't even know Justin Fields was athletic coming out of Ohio State.
Run
the ball. Like we knew this fast. Like we
didn't know he was
a lot
that
of guys,
level, right?
Like, Trevor Lawrence runs a 4.4. It's like a lot of these guys are just fast now. It's just the athlete of today.
Yeah, Fields might have blown up a combine just like Richardson did if there had been a combine in 21.
Nobody knew Justin Fields was that dude on the legs until this past year. It's like, and a lot of that had to do with like he threw the ball great in college, like, and then I'm kind of expecting the same thing out of CJ Stroud, but that's for when we get to the NFC side. But yeah, I mean, CJ Stroud never had to run in college, but when he did have to run, it was very, very good. So
yeah, but I just think the Fields point is just that if Richardson can make can show the flashes that you want to see as a passer, even though again because he's a rookie, like it's not going to be perfect right away. And I think 2022 was kind of Fields' quasi rookie year because he finally had competent coaching happening in front of him.
I can't say that after Mitch.
Hey, fair enough, but still, I'm not trying to give him too much of a benefit of the doubt, but just the plan with Nagy was so bad. Like the 22 Bears staff had to do a total reset with Fields, so that's kind of the point there. But overall, like that's what I think. If that's what Richardson can do as a rookie, that you should be encouraged. And after that, wins and losses doesn't matter that much, but we'll see what happens.
So now that we're waiting to get the rest of the division on the way, waiting on our second guest. Talking to two Bears fans, I might as well bring up the point. How do y'all feel about the fact that Matt Nagy is probably going to win multiple Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes whenever he takes over as head coach when Andy Reid retires?
I mean, that just is what it is. It's hard for me to care too much, to be honest.
What about the fact, like, a lot of people forget that, like, you could have drafted Patrick Mahomes. Like, nobody ever talks about that. It's like you took
Oh, you don't let me forget it.
Don't.
you took Mitchell Trubisky
don't-
instead of Pat Mahomes.
I didn't do that. Don't say you. I didn't do that. That was all
Nobody-
Ryan Pace.
It's
All right.
all, like, nobody ever talks about it. So I just have to remind.
I've got to
remind
shut
the
this down
fellas.
because I can only take so much pain in one night. But thank you so much for joining us, Adam.
Yeah,
we really
thanks for having
appreciate
me,
you
guys.
coming on talking Colts with us. Do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter @_Adam Hess. I'm not honestly not much to plug. I'm not, like I said, not even really a Colts fan, but Q asked me to do this just because I live in Indy and I follow the team pretty closely. So happy to have hopped on and done this. And yeah, just if you want to follow me on Twitter, follow me. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank
Adam.
you.
Have a good night.
See you too.